It was Black Friday of 2013. My local Best Buy always opened earlier than other stores, and Best Buy was known to have the best deals. I was searching for a new laptop for school as I'd be starting college in the spring, and Best Buy seemed like the ideal store for that. I didn't need some super advanced computer, just a system that can help me do simple tasks. Now, this was when Black Friday was peak, when companies didn't gaslight customers into thinking they lowered prices like they do now. If you've gone shopping on Black Friday these past few years, you know what I'm talking about. There were about 30 plus people already camped out in front of the Best Buy to get their hands on the best deals. It was around 5 a.m. and everyone was eager for them to open any minute. The second they did, everyone stormed the building, getting their hands on basically everything in sight. I knew I had to be fast, so I hurried to the electronics section and grabbed the cheapest laptop and headed to the register. I buy it and leave the store back out into the parking lot into my car, just wanting to go home and back to sleep. Surprisingly, the parking lot was mostly empty and there weren't many people out as I thought. As I'm getting in my car, ready to drive home, I see something unexpected that completely caught me off guard. Out in the parking lot was a young boy, maybe around 9, approaching my car. He wore a bright, oversized jacket and appeared to be cautious about something. He goes up to my car and lightly taps on my window, motioning for me to roll it down. Now, I've seen too many horror movies to be stupid enough to do that, so I roll it down just a tad to be able to talk to him. Right off the bat, he seems shaken up by something and asks me if I had any spare change for food. Now, I never carry cash on me, and when I do, it's spent very quickly. However, just in case, I check the glove compartment where I would normally keep change and see I had a $50 bill. Though I wasn't trying to give a kid $50, so I politely said that I didn't have any, but that I'd be happy to buy him food. There was a long pause before he said that it was fine and that he'd ask someone else. It was then when I started to realize that he didn't appear to have anyone with him. No parents, no friends, no relatives, nothing. That's when I glanced past him and saw someone hiding behind one of the cars from a distance. I'm unsure if they saw I had spotted them, but I didn't want to take the chance that they did. After putting 2 and 2 together, I sped out of the parking lot just wanting to get home. I told the kid that I had to go and that I hope things work out for him. Call me cruel or whatever, I was not about to get robbed or whatever sick trap this was. Anyway, I drive home and finally get some rest until the next morning where I told my family about my encounter. I remember them scolding me about how I was incompetent and that I should have called the police right then. Now, I could understand calling the cops, but even if I did, chances are the kid and that other person would both be gone. It's also worth noting that police in this area never actually took anything too seriously unless it was a severe crime. About a month goes by and my family and I are at my godfather's house for Christmas when my mom saw a chilling article from our town. There were reports of 2 children going missing in that area, one of them being the kid I had seen. Turns out, he had been missing for over a year and police had released his photo. Remember when I said police in my city weren't on top of their game? Yeah, well, this is one prime example of that. I had reported my sighting of him to police, but nothing ever became of it. Till this day, I strongly believe that someone had been using him as a decoy to convince people to do shady stuff, and I almost fell for it. It's been over 10 years now, and he was found deceased by a canal just a few months from my encounter. The news said it was the result of natural causes, but I've always wondered about that. My family and I live in Georgia and would sometimes visit our extended family in Virginia for the holidays. This happened in 2009, and we had been invited to stay with them for Thanksgiving for a few days. We rarely saw each other, so we wanted to spend as much time with them as possible. They lived in a rural part of Albemarle County, and their house was massive. We had other family flying in from around the US and planned on having enough food for 40 plus people. It's a very long and boring ride up there, but we get there before noon and have time to mess around and talk with them. And we, kids, start to play around in the downstairs basement playing the Wii and whatnot until it was time for dinner. Us and our cousins are down there for a good while when we get bored and decided to play hide and seek. We were always glued to the video games, so we decided to switch it up a bit and play something productive, if that made sense. We each play bubblegum to decide who would seek first. It was later decided that it would be me, and so I gave everyone a minute to go hide while I counted down. Mind you, this basement was huge, so there were so many places to hide. However, the only rule was that we could only hide in the basement and not the house itself. Long story short, I count down and begin tossing the place, trying to find them any way I could. Searching rooms, under tables, behind couches, and even in the dryer. As I make my way past one of the hallways down there, I notice a large blue tarp laying on stuff in the boiler room. I remember somewhat laughing and quietly tiptoe over to the blue tarp, expecting to see one of my cousins hiding underneath it. Without hesitation, I yanked the tarp off, but did not see any of my cousins. Instead, I saw a man, maybe in his mid-30s, staring right through my soul. I watch as he puts his finger to his lips, doing a hushing sound while giving me this wicked grin. I screamed so loud that all of my cousins came out of hiding and freaked out at the sight of him. It did not take long for my dad and uncle to come down to see what was wrong. When they saw this man, they did not hesitate to tackle him. The fight was over pretty fast, with both my dad and uncle delivering several blows to his face. My uncle was able to identify him as my aunt's ex-boyfriend who had somehow found his way into the house. God only knows what he was planning on doing or why he was here. According to my aunt, she hadn't seen him in years, which only made the situation even more unsettling. He was later arrested and charged with breaking and entering. There were rumors around the family about assault taking place, but that hasn't been confirmed nor denied. I was still a kid back then, and looking back at it now, it's much more terrifying to think what he could have possibly been doing. Walmart and Target not only attract the weirdest people, but also dangerous people. This isn't the type of story to have you on the edge of your seat type of story, but man, is this something we never expected. It was Black Friday of 2013, which meant my brothers and I were going video game shopping. Video games for consoles were peak during this time, so everyone and their grandma were eager to get their hands on the new games. This was especially true with Grand Theft Auto V, a game that was taking over the world at the time, and we were definitely not going to risk not getting it. My mom gave us each $200, which was also our Christmas present, meaning we'd pretty much have to buy our own gifts. We were approaching that age where our parents knew we no longer believed in Santa, hence why they were doing this. We started with Target, which was pretty busy, even in the morning trying to look for the game. However, most of the aisles in the store were cleared, meaning that the game was likely gone. Disappointed, but also not surprised, we walk over to the gaming section and see that it had been ransacked as well. I remember my brother yelling a "God damn it" when we see a man we had never seen before approach us. He calmly asks what was wrong, and we had just told him we were disappointed that the game we wanted was sold out. To our surprise, he introduced himself as the assistant store manager and that he actually had 2 extra games in one of the back offices. We were extremely confused as, even though he claimed to work here, he wasn't wearing anything that would resemble a manager or even an employee. Apparently, the games were originally on hold, and I guess the person who wanted it never came to get them. He tells for us boys to go with him to the back so that he could get them for us. Mind you, we were both 14 at the time, so we didn't even question him or think twice about it. We follow him to the back of the store where he opens the door to a room with a desk and computer. He grabs a plastic bag off the desk and hands us each a copy of the game we've been after. Then he tells us to go pay up front, and we gladly do. At this point, we were both thrilled and thought we had lucked out by the manager. We bought the games and left the store with smiles on our faces, talking about how we were the luckiest people alive. Before calling our mom to come pick us up, my brother suggested we go over to another store to look at some more stuff. We go over to another store, but don't end up buying anything as we were low on money. With nothing to do, we then call our mom to come pick us up, and she arrives within a few minutes as she was already close by. We get home and are immediately eager to play our games. I let my brother go first, and I watch as he unwraps the plastic film of the case. However, what happened next was something that shocked us both. My brother was expecting to see a game disc, but instead saw a flattened plastic Ziploc bag folded in where the disc was supposed to be. He takes it out, and inside the bag was what appeared to be a yellowish substance in the form of powder. Out of curiosity, my brother opens the bag and instantly starts coughing hysterically. I scream for my mom as I try to sit him upright to get him to relax. This utterly terrified me because it wasn't the normal cough you'd hear. His were more severe, and he was wheezing as if he were gasping for air. My mom storms into the living room in a panic and tells me to call 911 while she proceeded to perform CPR. My mom is an RN, so I let her do what she needed to do. It didn't take long for an ambulance to arrive and get my brother moving. By the time they got here, my brother was pale as a ghost with major discoloration. Just to be safe, I opened my game, and sure enough, there was another small bag in it containing the same thing. I didn't even dream of touching it and just let the police deal with it. My brother was rushed to the hospital where he was treated for toxic fumes and would survive. It took a while for him to go back to normal though. For weeks after, he had been coughing here and there as well as having blurry vision until it eventually went away. As it turns out, that so-called manager at Target was no manager after all. He was a local druggie impersonating a store worker to try and get rid of whatever he gave us. He must have thought that giving it to unsuspecting teens would be the best way to go about it. How he managed to impersonate a store employee without getting caught is anyone's guess. Police say that he couldn't have been there long as someone would have noticed. My brother is doing fine now and has just graduated college with his bachelor's in pre-med. As for the employee imposter, I have no idea what happened to him. I don't know if he was ever caught, locked in prison, died in a car crash, or is still out there. I'd like to think that he was thrown in jail, but something tells me otherwise. Back before my girlfriend Eliza and I started dating, we hung out all the time as good friends. We both obviously didn't have the same feelings for each other back then, but we did enjoy each other's company. This happened around the time where we both started to feel that there was something more to our relationship than friends. It was the winter of 2018, and we both had planned a skiing trip up to Vermont. Vermont had really good slopes, and with us having some experience with skiing, we were up for a challenge. We rented out a hotel room close to the ski resort as it seemed the most convenient for us. We took the gondola ride up to the mountain and had a great time skiing. As much as people don't like the idea of skiing, it was actually really fun if you practiced. That being said, we spent most of the day skiing and having a blast. Apart from the ski resort was a hiking trail and lodge for people who either didn't want to go skiing or if people wanted a break. It was nearing the end of the day, and Eliza suggested we take the hour-long hike around the mountain. Now, this hike was sort of a do-it-at-your-own-risk type of hike, meaning there was no trail guide or anything like that. The only thing we had as a guide was some painted markings around the trees to know where we were going. Even though it was a beginner's hike, it was still really easy to get lost in these woods. Eliza and I started our hike, just enjoying ourselves and whatnot. We're about 20 minutes into the hike when she has the urge to pee. It wouldn't be for another 50 minutes or so before we reached an actual bathroom, so she said she'd go into the woods and that she'd be back. I watch as she walks off the path and into the woods before disappearing behind a large tree. She went pretty far off, but I thought she just needed extra privacy, especially us being on our first trip together. However, as the minutes passed, she never returned to the path and I didn't even see her. I then thought to myself, what could she possibly be doing that's taking her so long? I thought. At this point, she had been gone for a good 10 minutes, and that's when I started to get worried. I step out of the trail and follow her footpath to try and find out where she went. Thank God I see her standing by a small clearing with her phone out. Then she motions for me to go to her. When I walk up to her, I see what she stopped for. In this small clearing was what I could only describe as huge bones. Maybe bear, maybe horse, I don't know. The majority of the bones were organized in circles, and even some formed into a teepee of sorts. There were also some smaller bones hanging from trees by some string. I asked Eliza what the hell this was. As expected, she didn't know, and we began to wonder if the resort knew about this. There was also what appeared to be a half-formed humanoid snowman-type sculpture next to the bones, indicating that someone had recently been here. All of a sudden, we both began to get a strange feeling that we were being watched, and we got out of there ASAP. We were not going to stick around to find out who or what made this, as it didn't strike me as anything good. We told the resort, but we never heard anything back from them after our trip. In the off chance that the bones were fake, it could have very well been someone easily pranking us. However, I'm not sure if I believe that. We're now a couple and plan on getting married soon, but we'll always have this story to share. In 2011, I moved to a college in Colorado during the winter for my master's degree in psychology. The school had a really good program, and a master's was mandatory for my career. My financial aid covered housing, and I had a single dorm that sat right on the edge of campus. Most of my classmates were nice, and my professors were some of the best, especially at an Ivy League school. Mid-semester, I had my midterm coming up and had a lot of homework to do. Living in a one-bedroom dorm with basically no friends, I decided that I'd take a walk to the woods beside the dorms. It was nicknamed Jordan's Forest. I still don't know who Jordan was or why it was called that, but a lot of students would commonly go there to smoke and stuff. I was never into that and hoped for a moment to myself with nobody around. So anyway, there I am, heading down the trail, keeping to myself when I decide to sit down by the old fountain hidden deeper into the woods. Apparently the fountain used to belong to a fraternity at one point. However, I guess they haven't used it in a while, as the fountain was hanging by a thread and appeared to have been unkept for years. As I'm sitting by the fountain, just reflecting on life, I hear footsteps in the snow from behind me. I turn around, and standing there is a man with a jacket and hat on. He gives me a friendly gesture as a way to say hello, and me, being the shy person I was, gave him a quick smile. He then comes up to me and introduced himself as Doug. As I said, I wanted to be alone with myself at the moment, and having someone else nearby really killed the mood. However, I didn't want to come off as rude, so I tell him my name and went on my phone to act busy. Right away, something seemed off about him, and he didn't exactly look like a college student. If I had to guess, I'd say he had to be in his late 30s or maybe early 40s. He proceeds to sit down beside me while keeping a short distance before saying, "So, is this your first time on campus?" he said. "Yeah, I just started my master's," I said. He looks at me with a smirk and says, "Oh, I see. Well, you'll love it here. You seem so young and bright. You do fine." I thank him for the compliment and tend to my phone to try and talk to him the least I could, hoping he'd get the hint. After some minor small talk, I finally say it's getting colder and that I was gonna head back to my dorm. As I'm walking away, I could just feel his eyes glued to the back of me, and the minute I turned around, I saw him staring at me. It wasn't until then where I started walking a little faster, hoping he wasn't following me. When I created a safe enough distance, I checked behind me once more and didn't see him. I breathed a sigh of relief and entered my dorm to continue studying for my midterm. However, as I was studying, I couldn't stop thinking about that man. I'm not one to be judgmental or anything, but he didn't strike me as a student at all. I'm not saying older people don't go back to school, they do, but there was indeed something off about him. I studied for another 2 hours or so when I decide to call it there and settle in for the night. I freshen up in the shower when my friend from my homestay calls me via FaceTime. This is someone who I haven't spoken to in weeks, so I step out of the shower with my robe on and gladly answer it. She was mentioning about how she got a new job and how she just moved in with her boyfriend. Basically a bunch of life stuff. We're talking on the phone for a good hour or so when I decide to lean my phone against some books so the camera is on me. She continues her story and such when she suddenly stops mid-sentence and looks at me strangely. When I ask her what was wrong, she says that there's someone looking into my room from the window. My blood ran cold and I turn around and see what I can only describe as Doug peeking through my window. The second he spots me, he ducks down out of view. I begin telling my friend that I had met this man earlier and didn't know who he was. She recommended I call campus security, and I did just that. I even had my friend still on the phone with me as a way to make me feel like I was with someone. As I'm on the phone with security, I hear my doorknob start to move and someone trying to open it. Thankfully it was locked, but I'll never forget the voice Doug made while trying to open my door. It was this low and gravelly voice, telling me that he could easily break this door down with one kick. I'll admit, I started to shed tears right then, just wanting security to get here. When they did, they had arrived with police who then placed him under arrest. Turns out Doug had actually been a student here once and has since been homeless for over 5 years. His girlfriend died while they were both in school and had chose to live near campus as a way to cope, as this was the last memory of her and him together. I will say I did feel some sympathy for him, but I couldn't allow him to continue what he did to me to others. Up until recently, he was released from prison for good behavior, and the university has since banned him from being on campus grounds. I graduated with honors a year later, and I haven't returned to campus since.